Welcome back to Tarik Talk. Let's get into today's episode. NADA New York returns from May 13th through May 17th, 2026, taking over the iconic Starrett Lehigh building in Chelsea once again for what has become one of the most important platforms for emerging contemporary art in the world. Now, for people unfamiliar with NADA, the name actually stands for the New Art Dealers Alliance, and unlike many traditional art fairs, NADA operates as a non-profit organization. That distinction is important because it shapes the entire identity and atmosphere of the fair itself. NADA has always positioned itself as artist-centered, community-driven, and focused on supporting younger galleries and experimental practices, rather than simply catering to the high-end luxury market. And honestly, that's what makes NADA feel different from so many other fairs happening during New York Art Week. While larger fairs often emphasize blue-chip names, massive booths, and multi-million-dollar sales, NADA has built its reputation around discovery. This is the fair where collectors, curators, artists, and critics often come specifically to find the next generation of influential artists before the wider market catches on. And for 2026, NADA New York feels especially ambitious. This year's edition features over 120 galleries, nonprofits, and artist-run spaces from more than 19 countries, creating one of the most internationally diverse editions in the fair's history, newartdealers.org. The Starrett Lehigh building itself continues to be one of the perfect homes for the fair. The historic industrial architecture, massive windows, open floor plans, and views across Chelsea create a very New York atmosphere. The building carries this mixture of downtown history, industrial design, and creative energy that really aligns with NADA's identity. And unlike some fairs that can feel extremely formal or intimidating, NADA often feels more relaxed, conversational, and exploratory. People spend time inside the booths. Artists are often present. Gallerists actually engage in long conversations. Collectors discover work organically. There's a sense of accessibility that makes the fair especially important for younger audiences entering the contemporary art world. One of the major highlights this year is the return of the TD Bank curated spotlight section, which focuses on emerging galleries presenting ambitious solo and two artist exhibitions, newartdealers.org. This section has become one of the most anticipated areas of the fair because it allows galleries to take risks and present highly focused installations rather than trying to overcrowd booths with inventory. And that's something NADA consistently prioritizes. The fair repeatedly emphasizes curatorial experimentation over pure commercial presentation. This year's edition includes a particularly strong emphasis on artist-run initiatives and nonprofit organizations, continuing NADA's long-standing mission of supporting alternative art ecosystems. Participating spaces include independent galleries from New York, Los Angeles, Mexico City, São Paulo, Berlin, Seoul, London, Athens, Tokyo, and beyond. newartdealers.org. There's also a noticeable increase in participation from Latin American galleries this year, reflecting the growing international influence of artists and curators working throughout Central and South America. And one of the exciting things about NADA is that the fair often introduces audiences to regions and artistic communities that larger commercial fairs sometimes overlook. You walk through the fair and suddenly discover a gallery from Guatemala City presenting a young painter next to a nonprofit from Athens showing experimental installation work beside a Seoul-based gallery introducing multimedia artists. That diversity creates an entirely different viewing experience. And unlike fairs that feel dominated by a single aesthetic trend, NADA often feels unpredictable. Painting exists beside performance. Sculpture beside sound work, textiles beside conceptual installation, photography beside digital experimentation. The fair embraces that multiplicity. Another major point of excitement surrounding NADA New York 2026 is the expansion of NADA Presents, the fair's programming platform featuring conversations, performances, screenings, and live events throughout the week. newartdealers.org. This year's talks program includes artist conversations, curator panels, collector discussions, and presentations addressing issues like sustainability, emerging art markets, artist-run culture, and the evolving relationship between technology and contemporary art. And honestly, those conversations are part of what makes NADA so valuable. The fair doesn't only function as a marketplace. It also functions as an educational and cultural platform. There's a visible effort to create dialogue around the realities of being an artist or running an emerging gallery today. That's especially important right now because the economics of the art world continue to become increasingly difficult for younger galleries. Rent costs rise, shipping costs rise, production costs rise. International travel becomes more expensive, and yet fairs like NADA continue creating opportunities for smaller galleries to gain international visibility. That role cannot be underestimated. For many participating galleries, NADA can genuinely change the trajectory of their program. A successful booth can lead to museum acquisitions, institutional exhibitions, international press coverage, collector relationships, and long-term growth. And for artists, the exposure can be career-defining. Another exciting aspect of NADA New York 2026 is the continued integration of pop-up activations throughout Chelsea and the surrounding neighborhoods. Several participating galleries are coordinating off-site exhibitions, temporary installations, rooftop events, and collaborative after-hours programming during the week. culturedmag.com. And because NADA overlaps with Frieze Week and the broader New York art calendar in May, the city itself becomes completely activated. Gallery openings happen simultaneously across Chelsea and the Lower East Side. Collectors move between fairs all day long. Artists host dinners and performances. Museums launch major exhibitions. Independent spaces organize late-night programming. There's this non-stop creative energy moving through the city, and NADA occupies a very specific position within that ecosystem. It's often considered one of the most approachable and community-oriented fairs during the week. That atmosphere matters. Younger artists attend, students attend, emerging curators attend. People who may feel intimidated by larger fairs often feel comfortable inside NADA. And because of that openness, the fair has developed a very loyal audience over the years. Another major talking point this year is NADA's increasing emphasis on sustainability and alternative exhibition models. Several exhibitors are presenting booths designed with reusable structures, recycled materials, and lower impact shipping strategies, artforum.com. The fair itself has also continued discussions around creating more sustainable economic models for younger galleries participating in international art fairs. That conversation feels especially relevant right now because the traditional fair system has become increasingly expensive and competitive. NADA's nonprofit structure allows it to approach those conversations differently compared to many corporate fair organizations. And that mission-driven approach continues attracting galleries that value experimentation, collaboration, and artist-centered programming. Another exciting development for 2026 is the fair's growing connection to digital and interdisciplinary practices. Several exhibitors are presenting projects involving moving image, sound installation, AI-influenced media, and immersive technologies. artreview.com. But unlike some technology-focused events that prioritize spectacle, NADA's approach still feels grounded in artistic inquiry rather than trend-chasing. The technology becomes part of the conversation rather than the entire focus. And that balance helps the fair maintain its identity. One thing people consistently say about NADA is that it still feels connected to artists in a very real way. The fair originated from a network of younger dealers trying to support one another and create alternatives within the traditional art market system. Even as the fair has grown internationally, that spirit still feels present. There's collaboration between galleries, there's openness between exhibitors, there's room for experimentation and failure. And honestly, that vulnerability is part of what makes contemporary art exciting in the first place. Not every booth needs to feel perfectly polished or hyper-commercial. Sometimes the most memorable work comes from risk-taking, and NADA continues creating space for that risk. The fair also maintains strong relationships with nonprofits, residency programs, and educational initiatives, helping connect emerging artists with broader professional networks. That infrastructure matters because the contemporary art world often depends heavily on access and visibility. Fairs like NADA create moments where artists, curators, collectors, writers, and institutions all intersect inside one environment. And during those few days in May, entirely new opportunities can emerge. Careers begin, collaborations form, exhibitions get planned, collections evolve, all happening through conversations taking place inside the aisles of the fair. There's also something uniquely New York about NADA. The industrial setting, the downtown energy, the blend of emerging and established voices, the mixture of international perspectives colliding inside Chelsea during one of the busiest art weeks of the year. It reflects the city's role as a place where different creative communities continuously intersect. And even as the art world becomes increasingly globalized, New York still remains one of the central meeting points for contemporary culture. NADA New York 2026 runs from May 13th through May 17th at the Starrett Lehigh Building in Chelsea, New York City, newartdealers.org, For anyone interested in discovering emerging artists, exploring experimental gallery programs, or experiencing one of the most community-driven fairs in the international art world, NADA continues to be one of the essential destinations during New York Art Week.